Our next speaker, as you can see, is Sarah Finchum. Sarah is a strategic sales leader at Catchpoint. She's going to be talking about recruiting and retaining A players and A-plus talent. Bit of background on Sarah. She's a strategic sales leader specializing in building and scaling high-performing enterprise SaaS sales teams across EMEA and the US. With over 20 years leadership experience in sales and account management and building world-class enterprise software sales teams. Loads of experience driving 6- and 7-figure deals, leveraging MedPick, which we've heard more and more about over the last couple of years, and executives at enterprise companies and large brands. Would you please put your hands together for Sarah Finchum? Thank you.
Thank you. It's a very generic title, strategic sales leader, isn't it? Well, I want to tell you a little bit about my early journey as a sales leader, and I'm thinking that some of you might be able to relate to this. So I'm at Catchpoint now. I joined the company two months ago, so very, very early. Prior to that, I spent 9, 10 of my last 12 years at a company called Sprinkler. So I joined them very, very early stage as a seller. They were doing about 12 million in sales at the time, just after their A round. And I stayed in a sales role until they hit about 150 million in sales. At that time, as a lot of companies do, they went through a major overhaul of leadership to kind of up their game, including bringing in a new CRO, but there was a trickle-down effect with lots and lots of management change across the board. I was on a sales team at the time that was holding the title of third worst sales team in revenue performance at the company. So we had basically about 20, 25 sales teams globally at the company. At the time, we were doing third worst. Needless to say, I had an opportunity at that point in time to take over leadership of the team that I had previously been on, and I'm guessing maybe many of you have had the opportunity to move into leadership for the first time in a similar scenario where you were kind of taking over leadership of a team of your former peers. That can be an awkward transition. Fast forward a little bit, I was effectively left with a team of one. That one individual had sold a total of $0 in his tenure of 1 year at the company. So I was pretty confident that I was going to do well. And I was left with an opportunity, and that's really what I want to talk to you about tonight. I think a lot of the elements of what I may share you've heard before. I think the point that I want to make is the pieces for me that I saw really work by putting them into action. So there's two parts. There's how do you attract the right people? How do you bring on the right people? And what are you really interviewing for? And what are you looking for? And then how do you keep those people long term? So fast forward, we hired a team that I knew that I wanted to set out to hire a diverse team. I had an opportunity to do that because I was starting with one individual. And I was given some guidelines, and those guidelines were the 4 C's. So maybe you've heard of these. I wouldn't be surprised if you have, but I've leveraged these 4 C's, and the first one being curiosity, which really is the intelligence level. And I had a belief that if I took talent, raw talent, real kind of natural given sales talent, and paired it with a world-class playbook and process, that we'd probably be in a pretty good position. But then I thought, okay, how do you interview for talent? How do you pick that out? It's sort of like a star quality. So I implemented these principles, starting with the curiosity piece, which to me meant not just intelligence, but the street smarts and the people skills and the IQ. And you can suss that out in an interview. The next piece was the coachability, which I think is probably one of the most important pieces, because when it comes to my belief of I've got to get the talent, but they have to be willing to adopt the playbook. And also, I was a brand new manager and I wanted a diverse team. I was bringing people on the team that were far more experienced than I was. So there needed to be a true element in their spirit of, this is who I am coachable, and being willing to do that with somebody with a very different level of experience. And that was critical to our success. So hiring people with that really kind of coachable growth mindset, but embodying, I think, humility is a part of that. So if you can test for humility, I think that's super, super important. The next piece is something that you can't really teach, but it's the character. So character is the drive, that natural drive. And I think you can inspire, but you can't really teach that. So it's something that you do need to suss out in that process. And then finally, the competence, which I think is probably the least important. So I did use those principles, but then with my kind of guiding knowledge that I wanted to hire a diverse team, which I did, in fact, put together a very, very diverse team. But then how do you get that team from being zero to hero? And I knew that in order to land the people that I wanted to land, I had to sell them not only on the opportunity, but on me. And I think a part of that is on what they're going to get out of me. And actually, this was just discussed. I think one of the critical pieces is the commitment to them that they're going to get the coaching, the development, and the learning, and they're going to be able to transform their career to the next level. I really tried to convince people that they were going to get that with me and with the company. By implementing a solid playbook and a solid process. So that was the beginning, but then how do you keep those people? I'm happy to say we went from being a brand new nothing team. By the end of the fiscal year, we were the top performing team in the world at the company at that time. Did it again the second year. My remit grew, and I took over a much larger portion of the business. That region was the top performing region. And I think the reason that we had so much success was, A, bringing in the right people, but then keeping them. And I think a big part of that was giving them the learning and development, constant hands-on, constant coaching, high expectations. I kept extremely high expectations of myself, but also of my team. But I don't think that's what stood out to them as much as it was the fun. I think that is probably one of the most important things that set us apart, is that we were having fun together. And I think you can do this in a diverse environment and in a remote environment. So I built that first team prior to COVID, but I then moved on to do this with other teams during COVID, and you can still manage that. But I think that's such an element that salespeople are craving, is they want peers that they can have fun with and learn from, which is the diversity piece is key for that. But they also want to know that they can have a good time with their manager. And it's not just a good time because you're going out and doing fun things, but this is probably the most important piece, is that you're getting them on a momentum of winning. And I think that's what really made us successful for a long, long time and helped me retain. I mean, my second hire on that team is still at the company, and he's by miles, the top performing AE ever of all time at the company. And I think getting that momentum of winning makes such a big difference with, I think, the happiness of the team, the fun that you're having, and that sort of thing is contagious. So that's what worked for me. Hopefully this was helpful, and there was a few nuggets there. And like I said, I think this is something that you'll be able to find that you can replicate in a remote environment or in an in-person environment. Thank you.